8 rarest GM muscle cars of the 1990s. The 1990s weren't just about grunge and dial-up. GM was quietly building muscle cars that most people overlooked. One of these could smoke a Corvette at a stoplight while still rocking a cassette player and wood trim. Let's get into it. 1996 Pontiac Firehawk by SLP, 6-speed manual. Starting off the list was something very strange. It looked almost identical to your average Trans AM. Same swooping lines, same aggressive nose, nothing to suggest it was hiding something rare, something nearly extinct. But under that familiar shell lived something hand-built, track-honed, and nearly forgotten. This wasn't just any Firebird. In 1996, a small number of buyers ticked a very specific box, a 6-speed manual paired with a high-performance package from Street Legal Performance. SLP. That order didn't just get you a Firebird, it got you the Pontiac Firehawk. And that year, only 41 units came with the manual transmission. Let that sink in. 41. Performance wasn't just a promise, it was delivered. The Firehawk pushed out 315 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque, giving it a 0 to 60 time just under 5.5 seconds. Not earth-shattering by today's numbers, but in the mid-1990s, that was serious heat, especially from a car that, to most eyes, was just another F-body roaming the suburbs. The upgraded intake, catback exhaust, suspension tweaks, and exclusive Firehawk badging made it a complete package, but only for those who knew where to look. Most didn't, and that's the thing. It's not just rare, it's quietly rare. So few people realize this version even existed that it practically slipped through the cracks of GM's own legacy. Even among muscle car circles, the 96 manual Firehawk lives in whispers. Still, it wasn't perfect. Critics pointed out that despite the horsepower gains, the car's steering feel was still numb, and interior quality lagged behind European rivals. It looked fast, drove fast, but still had that 1990s GM plastic dashboard feel that didn't quite match the price. It also wore Goodyear GSC tires, which performed well in the dry, but got unpredictable in the wet. But all that fades when you realize you're behind the wheel of one of the rarest production cars GM built that decade. A car that could leave Mustangs behind at the light and still get mistaken for a regular Pontiac at the next gas station. Only 41 exist, and chances are most of them are tucked away in garages, quietly gaining value. Now, if you thought this was rare, wait till you see what came out of Oldsmobile. 1990 Pontiac Grand Prix STE Turbo. If the Firehawk was a secret weapon hiding in plain sight, this one was even more confusing. It didn't look fast, it didn't sound fast, and it absolutely wasn't built for burnout contests in high school parking lots. But in 1990, Pontiac quietly launched something that broke its own mold, a luxury sedan that flirted with the turbocharged edge of performance, then disappeared almost immediately. This is the Grand Prix STE Turbo, a front-wheel drive, 4-door oddity that nobody expected and few remember. But for the short moment it existed, it stood as one of the boldest experiments Pontiac ever approved. Let's talk numbers. A 3.1-liter turbocharged V6 for 205 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque. Paired with a 4-speed automatic, it could do 0 to 60 in just under 7 seconds. Not blistering by modern standards, but fast enough in its era to raise eyebrows, especially when the car pulling away from you looked like a company fleet vehicle. This car wasn't about muscle in the traditional sense. It was about ambition. Pontiac equipped it with features ahead of its time. Digital dashboard, driver information center, full leather, and multi-button steering wheel controls. It felt like a glimpse into a sport luxury future that GM, unfortunately, never followed through on. And that's where the story twists. The STE Turbo was a 1-year-only offering. Just around 5,000 units made it to production before Pontiac scrapped the idea. Why? Blame high costs, niche appeal, and an audience that just didn't know what to do with it. It was too refined for muscle fans, too aggressive for the Buick crowd, and too expensive for everyday buyers. It became a misfit, and eventually a ghost. But those who know, really know, see it differently. This wasn't a failure. It was a rare glimpse of what GM could have been if it had bet harder on turbo tech and sport sedan hybrids. A forgotten warrior from the turbo wars of the early 90s, overshadowed, overlooked, and now nearly impossible to find. And next up, we're leaving sedans behind and stepping into something completely unexpected, a truck, but not just any truck, one that came out of nowhere and left everything else behind in the dust. 1992 GMC Sonoma GT. Just when you think GM couldn't get any weirder with performance, they decide to soup up a compact pickup truck. No flared fenders, no racing stripes, just a quiet little box on wheels with chrome bumpers and a bench seat. Something you'd expect to see parked outside a hardware store, not staging at a stoplight. But in 1992, GMC gave us the Sonoma GT, and it was not your uncle's work truck. It came with a 4.3-liter V6, but not the regular kind. This one had a unique performance camshaft, freer flowing exhaust, and a reworked ECU that pushed it to 195 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. That power was routed through a 4-speed automatic and rear-wheel drive. No AWD like its more famous cousin, the Cyclone, but still enough to clock 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds flat in a pickup that looked like it was built to haul mulch. Here's the thing. This wasn't some parts bin special. GMC actually designed this to be a spiritual follow-up to the Cyclone, but at a lower price point. It shared the same performance philosophy, subtle exterior, upgraded internals, and a shockingly quick launch for something shaped like a shoebox. But they didn't make many. Only 806 Sonoma GTs were ever built, all in 1992. Most were black with gray lower cladding, and all came with bucket seats, a center console, and subtle GT badging. So subtle that even enthusiasts miss it at first glance. Still, it had its flaws. It lacked the Cyclone's all-wheel drive grip, and because it didn't scream performance, it never really built a following. Many were driven, used, and eventually scrapped. Finding one today in clean condition is a serious challenge, but maybe that's part of the charm. A humble hauler that hit a sports car heart and vanished before most people realized what it was. We're only getting started. The next one wasn't a truck or a sedan or a muscle car. It was a front-wheel drive coupe that revved higher than anything else GM made in the 90s. And hey, if you're into rare builds, hidden gems, and the forgotten corners of GM history, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. 1991 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais 442 W41. If you thought muscle only came with V8s and rear-wheel drive, this next car will throw that rulebook out the window. It didn't rumble, it didn't roar. And yet in 1991, GM quietly produced a high-strung front-wheel drive coupe that could outrun expectations and rev all the way to 7,400 RPM doing it. This was the Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais 442 W41, and it's probably one of the most misunderstood cars GM built in the entire decade. It packed a 2.3-liter DOHC quad-4 engine tuned to squeeze out 190 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque. Numbers that might seem modest now, but remember, this thing weighed just over 2,800 pounds and came with a 5-speed manual. The result? A raw, visceral driving experience that punished mistakes and rewarded control. It wasn't smooth. It was loud, buzzy, and borderline violent at high RPMs, and that's exactly why it has a cult following today. The W41 wasn't just a trim, it was a homologation special. Built so that Oldsmobile could qualify for SCCA competition, the W41 added shorter gearing, a unique ECU, stiffer suspension, and deleted power accessories to save weight. It was a street-legal race car that no one asked for, and even fewer people bought. How rare are we talking? Just 204 units were ever made. That's it. No typo. 204. But here's the twist. It didn't look like much. The body was nearly identical to any other Cutlass Calais on the lot. No flares, no wild decals, just a small badge and some subtle tweaks, which makes you wonder, would you have even noticed it back then? Or would you have written it off as a college kid's daily beater? Drop a comment and let me know. Because spotting a W41 today is like finding a 4-leaf clover in a scrapyard. Up next, we're staying in 1991, but this time we're shifting to something with rear-wheel drive, a proper V8, and one of the best handling packages GM offered that year. 1991 Pontiac Firebird Formula 350 WS6 package. From understated coupes to front-drive screamers, GM's lineup in the early 90s was anything but predictable. But now we're stepping into something more familiar. Long hood, rear-wheel drive, a V8 under the skin. On paper, it sounds like every other muscle car, but this one was the end of an era and the beginning of something most people never got to experience. We're talking about the 1991 Pontiac Firebird Formula 350 with the WS6 package, a car that rarely gets mentioned, despite being one of the purest driver's cars GM made that year. Let's start with the basics. Under the hood sat the 5.7-liter L98 V8, borrowed from the Corvette, producing 245 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. Paired with a 4-speed automatic, the manual was only available on the smaller 5.0. The Formula 350 could do 0 to 60 in around 6 seconds, which was impressive for the time. But the real secret weapon wasn't the engine. It was the suspension. The WS6 package added upgraded springs, thicker sway bars, a quicker steering ratio, and sticky 16-inch Goodyear Gatorback tires. This wasn't just a straight-line car. It could corner, brake, and hold its own on a road course, something earlier muscle cars weren't exactly known for. Visually, it was cleaner than the Trans Am. No boy racer wings, no aggressive ground effects. Just a flat hood, understated lines, and a small formula badge. It was for people who knew. And those who knew it was something special. But here's the twist. 1991 was the final year for the third-gen Firebird. The design was aging, the platform was nearing its end, and most people had their eyes on what the upcoming fourth gen would bring. That meant the Formula 350W S6 was overlooked, ignored. Even among enthusiasts, it became a forgotten footnote. Production numbers were low. Under 500 WS6 equipped formulas made it off the line in 91. And with most buyers opting for flashier Trans Ams, even fewer exist today in stock condition. This car wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was all business. And it marked the quiet swan song of one of GM's most beloved muscle platforms. Next, we're switching gears. Literally. The next car came with all-wheel drive, turbo power, and acceleration numbers that embarrass supercars. 1991 GMC Cyclone. You've heard of fast cars, maybe even fast trucks, but nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared anyone in 1991 for what GMC unleashed. It looked like a compact pickup, black paint, red badges, lowered ride height, no spoilers, no chrome, no nonsense. Just a serious stance and an even more serious mission: outrun everything. This is the 1991 GMC Cyclone, and it wasn't just quick, it was record-breaking. GMC took the compact Sonoma and injected it with pure chaos. A 4.3-liter turbocharged V6, beefed up with forged internals, an intercooler, and a Mitsubishi turbocharger, gave the Cyclone 280 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. But raw numbers don't tell the whole story. What made it legendary was its all-wheel drive system, launching it from 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds. That's not a typo. 4.3 in a truck. At the time, that made it quicker than a Ferrari 348, faster than a Corvette. Even Car and Driver called it the fastest vehicle they'd ever tested to 60 miles per hour. In 1991, it was pure madness. It didn't stop at straight-line speed either. The Cyclone had stiffer suspension, performance brakes, and a sport-tuned transmission. Everything about it was built for speed, except the exterior. That part stayed humble. No one expected a black GMC pickup to smoke them at the lights. So why isn't it more famous? That's where it gets tricky. GMC only made 2,995 Cyclones in total, and they were expensive. Too expensive for the average truck buyer, and too weird for the average sports car fan. Add in the fact that it only came in one color, black, and had very little cargo capacity, and it quickly became a niche toy for speed freaks who didn't care about practicality. But today it's a legend. A factory-built freak of nature that never got a sequel. It came, it conquered, and it vanished in the space of a single model year. Next up, a car that technically never existed for sale, and yet it just might be GM's most mysterious muscle project of the decade. 1992, Buick LeSabre Grand Sport prototype. You expect muscle from a Camaro. You might even expect it from a truck like the Cyclone. But no one, and I mean no one, saw this one coming. In 1992, Buick toyed with an idea so strange, so out of character, that it barely made it past the prototype stage. A full-sized front-wheel drive LeSabre with a Grand Sport badge. This wasn't a marketing gimmick, it was real. Buick engineers took the ultra-soft LeSabre, swapped in performance parts, and gave it a purpose the production model never had: to be fast. Under the hood, a supercharged 3.8-liter V6, tuned to make over 240 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque. That might not sound earth-shattering now, but it was enough to push this full-size cruiser from 0 to 60 in under 7 seconds, on par with the Mustang GTs of the time. And remember, this wasn't a stripped-down sports coupe. It had bench seats, chrome trim, and a massive trunk. You could drive your grandparents to brunch and then embarrass a Camaro on the highway. The Grand Sport prototype featured a stiffer suspension, upgraded brakes, unique wheels, and even bodywork tweaks to set it apart. Buick was serious about giving it an edge, but it never happened. Only a handful of prototypes were built. Some say 3, maybe 4. None were sold to the public. Buick quietly shelved the idea, deciding the world wasn't ready for a high-performance LeSabre. And maybe they were right. It didn't fit any category. Too big for a sports sedan, too soft for a muscle car, too fast for a Buick. But for those who've seen one in the flesh or driven one, It's unforgettable. A symbol of what could have been if GM had said yes to risk just a little more often. One of these cars might still be out there, sitting in a private collection or hidden in a warehouse, untouched, unknown. And if rare muscle, forgotten prototypes, and GM's wildest experiments are your thing, don't miss what we have as #1 on our list. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a piece of the story, because the rarest one of all is still waiting. 1994 Chevrolet Camaro B4C Special Service Package. You've made it this far through a list of rare and wild GM creations, but we saved the stealthiest for last. The kind of car you might walk past at a gas station without a second glance. No decals, no flashy trim, just a stock-looking Camaro that, in reality, was anything but ordinary. This is the 1994 Chevrolet Camaro B4C, better known as the Special Service Package, a police-grade muscle car hiding in plain sight. Built for law enforcement agencies, the B4C package turned a regular Z28 into a high-performance pursuit machine. It came with the same 5.7-liter LT1 V8 as the Corvette, producing 275 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque, allowing for 0 to 60 in just 5.2 seconds. But beyond raw speed, it was the upgrades that made this car a true standout. Heavy-duty suspension, engine oil coolers, four-wheel disc brakes, and a beefier alternator. It was designed to run hard all day and take the punishment that civilian Camaros couldn't. But here's what makes it legendary. Civilian versions of the B4C were almost never sold. Most were auctioned off after police use, modified, or simply trashed. Finding a clean, untouched B4C today is like searching for a needle in a junkyard. Even among muscle car collectors, it's often overlooked because of how subtle it looks. No wings, no badges, just raw capability hiding under plain clothes. Less than 500 units were produced in 1994, and even fewer survive in original condition. Many were passed between departments or stripped for parts, making surviving examples incredibly rare and historically important. And that's what earns it the top spot. It's not just rare, it's purpose-built, designed for real-world performance in high-stakes environments, but without the theatrics of its showroom siblings. It's the ultimate ghost car, a machine built to chase, now nearly impossible to catch. Which one of these rare beasts took you by surprise? Was it the cop-spec Camaro, the turbocharged Buick no one could buy, or that fire-breathing truck built to outrun Ferraris? Drop your pick in the comments. I'm watching to see who really knows their GM deep cuts. And if you thought these were rare, just wait. Next up, we're uncovering the cars GM built so fast, so bold, they were quietly shelved before they ever had a chance to shine. Some were whispered about, others were nearly banned. Hit that subscribe because the ones you've never heard of